Teachers of Reddit, what is the worst parent conference you've ever had? An unintended one when an undergrad I was teaching requested a formal meeting with me, her mother, and the dean of the college at the university. She had received a 97% on an essay, and she and her mother were both in tears demanding that I be reprimanded and retrained for unfair grading policies. I think my mouth was agape the entire time. I suck with commas and had a college English teacher take 10% off my grade for every occurrence of too many or not enough commas. I can't write 3 sentences without doing it. This was a community college. I felt like I paid out of pocket for this guy to be a big dig to me. I basically stopped paying attention to the class after the first 2 papers and it really soured me to English. I had gotten A's and B's my whole life. He was Romanian and learned English from the Bible in Romania. What a hunt. Not quite a parent-teacher conference. But it was after I got my first self-lit phone long ago when they were just coming out. An 8th grader stole it. My wife called the phone and the guy who answered was dumb enough to give her his name. It was a parent who was using it. The kid confesses to taking it and the parents came in. Admin confronted the parents about it, explaining that we just wanted the phone back. The parents tore into the kid for confessing he took the phone and told him his birthday was cancelled for ratting on them. Yikes. Parents of the year. For sure. Sadly, this kid is following in the footsteps of his stellar family. How exactly is society supposed to help a kid who has been taught that lying, stealing, cheating, and getting punished for doing the right thing is okay? I had a student fail my class and I thought that I'd been emailing with their parents throughout the semester. Turns out the parents did not speak English and relied upon their children to translate for them. Their older sibling was studying abroad, so the student was able to hide everything from the parents. Once they came home, the jig was up. The parents could not believe their child had lied for months. So we had a face-to-face meeting. It was so awful to see their faces crumble in shame and humiliation as their oldest child translated the meeting. From my wife. Teacher of 5+ years. 2nd grade parent had earbuds in her ears the entire time. And looked at her phone the entire time. When my wife complimented her daughter and told her that she was doing well, the parent laughed and said she's a brat. Edit. I realize now that this is essentially a scene from Matilda. The child was not telekinetic. But if she was, we'd definitely adopt her and raise her to be a good superhero. Oh man, I feel for that kid. I was talking to the parent of a kindergarten student and telling her ways she could help her child at home. She suddenly said, "Do you get paid to do this?" I said. Yeah, she said. Well, I don't, then swiped all the papers off the table, stood up and walked out. I was like, ooh, okay then. I love that parents think kids only need to learn 6 or 7 hours a day at school and they are fine. You are a true hero for teaching kindergarten. Former teacher. First parent-teacher conference. I put a lot of time into preparing this evening as an innocent 22-yo. I gave a 10-minute speech to about 15 family members. They didn't seem to care at all. Then I met with each individually. And they were combative. Some stunk of alcohol. One straight up yelled at me for my grading system. It was basically the beginning of the end of my interest in teaching. I had to tell a well-known gang leader that his son was failing my class. Actually went better than expected. But the anticipation was a rick. I've worked with tons of high-level criminals and gang leaders. It's actually pretty easy to talk to them. Just show them respect and don't act as if they are stupid. Being completely honest is usually a shock to them since everyone around them their whole lives usually plays with lying all the time. Being honest with them shows mad respect. And they will often open up and trust you very quickly. Because it's a trait they instinctively seek out. The worst thing you can do is to be afraid of them. Because they see that as an opportunity to be exploited. That being said, I totally get where you are coming from. Calling a Hell's Angel out on his BS and telling him to leave my office had me awake at night. The next morning, he came to apologize to me, saying he realized he had been disrespectful. and that he respected my ability to tell him off. I think I'm in the clear since it's been years. He actually gave me info later on. Self-serving of course. But still. Most parents are awesome and I enjoy visiting with them. A very small minority will try and verbally abuse you or bully you. Kids will twist words and incidents so they don't get into trouble. Some parents can't believe their angels can do anything wrong. I don't know why they believe that. I've ducked up as a kid and a young adult. My kid is no angel. That's not to say that teachers don't screw up and twist things either. Closed bracket. I mean, it wasn't exactly a bad conference, but one time the mother of a 6-year-old second grader was pushing for her son to skip second grade and go to third grade. I tried pointing out that even though his reading and math skills were excellent, advancing him further would create a gap in his knowledge about science and social studies. Not to mention the fact that he is very immature and socially sticks out. She kept on insisting that age was just a number. Finally, I turned to both the mother and father and asked when he is a 15-year-old senior in high school. What 18-year-old woman is going to want to go to prom with him? Then dad was like, hold up. 6 years old in second grade? So he already skipped a grade? This woman is obviously not as bright as her kid. Once had a phone conference with a parent who accused me of forcing students to come to my house and build a garage for me. The parent said his son was being ostracized and punished by me for refusing to come to my house and work on my garage. The only thing I could do was laugh at him. I thought it was a prank and hung up on him. Next morning, I had to meet with my principal because the parent had called and threatened to call the local news media about my classroom if I wasn't immediately fired. The parent left screaming rant on my principal's voicemail. We listened to it a few times and got some good laughs. The parent claimed I was making the kids drive to my house during class and if they didn't I was failing them. But his son had an A in the class and the drive to my house was longer than the class period. The parent was obviously nuts. But it had to be treated as credible. So, there was an investigation and there may even be a report about it in my personnel file. I've had other weird interactions with parents. But that one definitely takes the cake. Drugs. Schizophrenia? Any idea where he got that idea? Wife just told me another one. The last conference of the day. The parent, a guy, started the meeting with saying, "Do you feel that? Do you feel nervous?" implying a connection and nervously laughing. My wife felt super uncomfortable because he seemed to be coming on to her and sharing personal details about his life. No matter what she said, okay. Have a nice night. He'd just start another conversation and keep trying to talk. She eventually had to just grab her stuff and basically leave for the day to get him to leave. Do you feel that? That's my total lack of interest. One time a child peed all over the bathroom in the school. When we brought it up with the parent, they demanded to know why we didn't teach them how to properly use the bathroom. My GF's mom is a teacher in a very poor, mostly racial minority area. She once had a child in third grade, so was on the cusp of being tested for special needs, but basically was approached as being slow but no serious biological developmental issues. This child, on one disgusting occasion, ate his own feces. Yes, ingested, on purpose, his own excrement. When brought up to the mother, the response was, "Well, he was hungry." An administrator in the room responded, then sent him with some crackers. Ugh. The horror. I had a parent-teacher conference where I basically got called a racist. The father was like, "Can't you see my son is not like other kids? Give him the benefit of the doubt," heavily indicating his race. This was after his son cheated on a test. The best part was the father was a vice principal at another school, but his son went to our expensive private school because he didn't want him in the public school he worked at. The kid eventually confessed. And to be 100% transparent, my school is incredibly diverse. He was far from the only kid there who was his race. Admin wasn't super supportive. They ended up fudging his grade to please the parents after I gave him the 0. They wanted me to do it but I refused. I told admin they can do whatever they want with the gradebook, but I'm not touching it. Had an experience like that once. Was teaching at a majority minority school where the staff wasn't as representative, only 40% minority teachers. As a result, it was a frequent, and not always unwarranted, occurrence for a teacher to get labeled as racist. Or at the very least not treating students equally. I was sitting in a meeting between parents and all of this student's teachers, as well as the principal, to discuss gross behavior concerns we were having with this child. Sexually harassing peers, violent outbursts, etc. Parents claimed it was all because of his racist math teacher. The entire time, student is talking in Amharic to his parents and not responding to any English questions we pose. This goes on for about 30 minutes. Until our math teacher speaks up in what I was later told was perfect Amharic, explaining the situation to the child's parents in their native language. Turns out our white math teacher was a South African orphan that ended up raised in Ethiopia, and went to school in the same town as the child's father, albeit 15 years earlier. This whole chain of events pretty much stunned the parents silent, and the meeting wrapped up a few short minutes later. When asked later about what he had said, the teacher told us he had reminded the parents that were their son still in Ethiopia, he would have been hauled in front of the school at lunchtime and paddled in front of his entire class for what he had done. That a bell would be rung 50 times. Once each time he was paddled. Just as he as well as the kid's parents had no doubt experienced as a child. And that the kid was lucky they were in a part of the world that had gotten rid of such practices. But that their child's behavior was utterly inexcusable. And that how dare they suggest that the color of their skin somehow makes it okay for their child to disrespect women and commit violence. Unfortunately it had little effect. And 3 years later the student was in jail for selling drugs to minors. Less than 6 months after being expelled for intentionally starting a fire in the art room. I teach 7th grade. And the one that stands out to me was from my 2nd year in the classroom. Probably it sticks in my mind because I didn't feel confident in my job yet. So this interaction I had with a family threw me for a loop. Once, I had a struggling student come in with their family. And I was so eager to talk to his family. I was hoping that we could have some kind of constructive conversation that would lead to the kid's improvement in my class. I had pulled up their grades to explain why he had a D in my class and what he needed to work on to bring his grade up. Next thing I knew, the parents started completely berating the kid, calling him stupid and lazy, telling him that he was a failure. It was horrible. Even worse, the kid was on the autism spectrum. So he just really didn't have the kind of emotional stability to handle something like that. Heck, I don't know what 7th grader would be able to handle something like that. He started crying, and his parents apologized to me, and led him out into the hallway where they continued to berate him. It was rough. I tried to smooth things over by talking them through the kid's strengths, but they just wouldn't be deterred. The kid was sitting on the ground in the hallway just sobbing next to the lockers, and his parents just left, presumably to go conference with more teachers. I tried to console the student, but I don't think there was much I could have done. He was just completely heartbroken. What horrible parents. Some of these people need to be reported. I'm a school psychologist, not a teacher. But we still have lots of parent conferences. Worst one, spent a good half an hour explaining that I was diagnosing her son with autism and why. Everyone agrees, including the parent. And we move into developing his IEP. 20 minutes into this we're talking about his behavior plan and she asks me, I'm wondering, do you think he might have autism? Edit. I do want to say that 98% of parents I work with are kind to school staff and very invested in their children. The stories in this conversation are the exceptions, not the norm. One of my friends just moved from 4th grade special ed to 1st grade. The kids are smaller, cuter, and can't draw blood or bruise her as much, which is a plus. The drawback that she's just now realizing is the parents. Older kids' parents have gotten used to the fact that their kid isn't normal and needs extra attention. Parents of the really young kids are still in the denial stage. Half of them still can't accept that their kid should be in special ed, and are constantly fighting to get them out. I have 3 that stick out. 1. Student was a repeat freshman. Constantly dirty and full of hickeys. Tried to get high off of his inhaler. Definitely doing Drew Gus and high as a kite most of the time. He was failing everything for the 2nd time. The school called a meeting with mom. Mom comes in covered in dirty hoe clothes, hickeys, and meth teeth. She couldn't understand why she was called in. 2. Parent-teacher conferences. Student brings her mom into the room and points out the 40 random scholarships I have listed on the wall. Duct tape dresses for prom. Left-handed scholarships. Race-based scholarships. All sorts of stuff. The mom looks at the wall for 2 seconds. Turns to her daughter. And says, "You will never get any of these. You're too stupid." 3. Open house. Parents come in to visit each class briefly. Mom randomly stands up. Points to her kid. And says, "This one here? She's trouble. She don't listen. She's always got gum in her mouth. So help me God. If you see her with gum, you make her stand in the corner with the gum on her nose all class. You call me if she steps out of line. I'll slap her back in. Ooh, okay." The one where a parent told me it was unreasonable to expect my sophomore history students to write a 5-paragraph essay. Honestly, though, I've been very lucky in my career to have never had a seriously bad parent-teacher conference. In my sophomore history class, we had several essays, maybe 3-4, a semester. It's wild that she, as an English teacher, would say that lol. From the same parents' evening. 1. Parents of a student with a name fancy enough they might as well have been called Lord and Lady Ashcroft. They greet me with "It's a pleasure to meet you. You want to hunt like all the other teachers in very proper English." Was gobsmacked. Spoke to a colleague later who said, "Did you speak to X's parents?" They just sat down. Called me a hunt and left. 2. I had a student who was great at the work, but swore to an extent that would make a trooper blush. "Hey, how are you doing today?" for instance would come out as ducking high. Ducking how the duck are you ducking doing you ducking gobite? Suffice to say, I brought this up with his mother, who turned to him and said, "You ducking what?" "Ducking hell. We ducking talked about this, you wanker." I stopped policing his language after that. There wasn't any ducking point. Parent had their period all over the student chair. Right through her pajama pants. "This is what I came for.